Napoleon Bonaparte, a name that resonates through the annals of history, was a military genius and statesman whose impact on the world is still felt today. Born on August 15, 1769, on the island of Corsica, Napoleon rose from humble beginnings to become one of the most influential figures in European history. In this video, we will explore the life, achievements, and legacy of Napoleon Bonaparte. If you're ready, let's begin. Napoleon Bonaparte was born in Corsica, an island located on the Mediterranean coast, on August 15, 1768, to Carlo Bonaparte and Letizia Romolino Bonaparte. Despite being part of the Corsican nobility, Napoleon's family had modest means. Napoleon received his education in mainland France, graduating from the military academy in 1785. He was commissioned as a second lieutenant in an artillery detachment of the French army. He was on leave when the French Revolution broke out in 1789, during which he became involved with the Corsican branch of the Jacobins, one of many pro-democratic parties in France at the time. The Bonaparte family had a dispute due to their pro-democratic leanings, with the monarchy supporting the governor of Corsica. As a result, they fled Corsica for mainland France in 1793, where Napoleon returned to active military duty. Napoleon came into contact with Augustin Robespierre, the brother of the infamous Maximilien Robespierre. Maximilien Robespierre would lead the Reign of Terror, a period of anarchy marked by violence and the execution of those considered enemies of the French Revolution. However, when the Robespierre brothers fell from power and were guillotined in July 1794, Napoleon was placed under house arrest for a brief period due to his association with them. In 1795, he suppressed a monarchy-backed uprising against the revolutionary government, leading to his promotion to the rank of Major General. The French government had been in conflict with other European monarchies since 1792. In a series of battles that took place in Italy in 1796, Napoleon led a French army to victory against the larger and better-equipped Austrian forces. The Treaty of Campo Formio, signed between France and Austria, resulted in territorial gains for France. The Directory, a five-member governing group that had ruled France since the end of the Reign of Terror in 1795, tasked Napoleon with leading an invasion of Great Britain. Recognizing the French Navy's inadequacy compared to the superior British Royal Navy, Napoleon instead proposed an expedition to Egypt, which was under British influence at the time. Capturing Egypt would disrupt British trade with India, causing economic hardship in Britain. In 1798, the French army landed in Egypt and achieved victory in the Battle of the Pyramids in June of that year. However, during the Battle of the Nile in August, the French Navy suffered heavy losses against the British Navy. Napoleon later launched an invasion of Syria in 1798, then a province of the Ottoman Empire, which also ended in failure. As the political situation in France deteriorated, Napoleon decided to return to France and played a part in the overthrow of the Directory in 1799. This marked the beginning of a new ruling group called the Consulate, consisting of 3 members, with Napoleon becoming the first consul. His position was solidified by his victory over Austria at the Battle of Marengo in June 1800. In 1802, a constitutional amendment was enacted, making Napoleon the first consul for life. Napoleon's elevation to emperor was overwhelmingly approved by the French citizens in the French constitutional referendum of 1804. Among Napoleon's motivations for being crowned were to gain prestige in international royalist and Catholic circles and to lay the foundation for a future dynasty. In 1804, he crowned himself Emperor of France during a lavish ceremony at the Cathedral of Notre Dame. In his pursuit of stabilizing post-revolutionary France, he centralized the government by introducing reforms in banking and education while supporting science and art. His most significant accomplishment was the creation of the Napoleonic Code, which transformed the French legal system and continues to serve as the foundation of the legal systems in France and much of Western Europe to this day. The Napoleonic Wars, which began in 1803 and lasted until 1815, consisted of a series of conflicts between the French Empire and a coalition of European nations. In October 1805, the French fleet suffered a devastating defeat during the Battle of Trafalgar, which nullified the threat of a British Isles invasion. However, in December of that same year, the Battle of Austerlitz solidified his reputation as one of the greatest generals in European history. The French defeated a combined army of Austrians and Russians, leading to the termination of the Holy Roman Empire, which would later serve as a catalyst for the unification of Germany in 1871. In an effort to defeat his British rivals through economic means, Napoleon devised the Continental System in 1806, which blockaded European ports from British trade. Subsequent victories in 1807 and 1809 against the Russians and Austrians resulted in French territorial gains in Central and Eastern Europe. His military genius and tactics had initially led to several stunning victories, but his ambition led him to overextend his forces. The disastrous invasion of Russia in 1812, known as the Russian Campaign, marked a turning point. It proved to be a costly mistake as the Russians switched to scorched-earth tactics to deny the French army any hope of preparing for the brutal winter that would follow. By September of that year, both sides had suffered enormous casualties. The French army did eventually take Moscow, but all they found was an empty city, with its population having evacuated further east. Seeing little point in residing in Moscow, Napoleon retreated back towards the west under constant attack by the Russians. Only 100,000 of the original 600,000 managed to reach the safety of the empire. Further setbacks for Napoleon awaited him with the defeat of his armies in Spain. Napoleon's forces were again defeated in 1813 during the Battle of Leipzig by a coalition force of Austrian, Prussian, Russian and Swedish troops. Napoleon's attempt to economically isolate Britain through the continental system, a blockade of British trade, had severe consequences for his empire. This policy disrupted trade and commerce across Europe, leading to economic hardships for many nations under French control. In response to this economic warfare, the British established their own blockade and disrupted French trade routes. The continental system backfired and ultimately weakened Napoleon's hold on the European continent. The rise of nationalism across Europe was another significant factor in Napoleon's downfall. His conquests and imposition of French culture and laws on conquered territories fueled nationalist sentiments. Many European nations resented the French domination and sought to regain their independence. Nationalist uprisings, such as the Spanish War of Independence and the German Wars of Liberation, hindered Napoleon's ability to maintain control over his empire. Napoleon's empire faced increasing strains on its resources. The constant need for soldiers and financial resources to maintain his extensive military campaigns depleted France's reserves. The empire's taxation policies and forced conscription led to internal discontent, and many regions experienced economic hardships. The lack of sufficient resources and a strained economy weakened Napoleon's ability to continue his expansionist agenda. The Sixth Coalition's alliance, formed against Napoleon, proved to be a formidable force. European powers were united in their determination to defeat him. They coordinated their efforts, and the combined strength of their armies eventually overwhelmed Napoleon's forces. The Battle of Waterloo in 1815 was the final and decisive confrontation. Napoleon's defeat at Waterloo marked the end of his rule and led to his exile. After his defeat at Waterloo, Napoleon was exiled to the remote island of St. Helena in the South Atlantic, where he spent the remaining years of his life. He died in exile in 1821, marking the end of his era. However, Napoleon's legacy endured. His legal reforms, the Napoleonic Code, influenced legal systems in many countries. His military tactics and strategies continued to be studied by military leaders worldwide. Despite his defeat, Napoleon's impact on European and world history cannot be denied. In conclusion, the collapse of Napoleon Bonaparte's empire can be attributed to a combination of factors, including military defeats, the continental system, the rise of nationalism, the exhaustion of resources, and the alliance of European powers against him. While Napoleon's empire was characterized by remarkable military successes and significant reforms, his ambitious expansion ultimately led to his downfall. His legacy, however, lives on in the legal and military arenas, and his story remains a fascinating chapter in world history. Napoleon's story is a testament to the heights one can reach and the depths one can fall. If you found this video informative and engaging, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. See you in the next video.